Right, so everybody should see in the corner, it should say Paul is recording.
Yeah.
Legal snags by telling you, I have told you. Right, let's do the countdown, shall we? And we'll go in 5, 4. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another E5 podcast. I'm your host, Paul Meenan, and today I am joined by my tag team partners. Introduce yourself. One of you.
Oh, sorry. Normally JW kind of goes in. I kind of go behind JW on this one. Start again, Paul.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another E5 podcast. I am your host, Paul Meenan. I am here with my tag team partners. Introduce yourself, chaps.
Hello, I'm JW.
Good evening. It's David Watts here, Sparky Ninja.
And today, gents, we are joined by another special guest, part of our series, the last of our series, where we are joined by one of the, I'm going to say this out loud, the best Instagrammers. So young Mikey of Residual Current. She's definitely better than you. Sorry, Mike, she is. There you go. I've thrown Mike under the bus. Challenge accepted, Mike. Louise Tarling, please welcome to the podcast.
Hi, how are you all?
We are marvellous. Long day. I'm not going to lie, to say the least. It's been a long day at work, and I've been out in the garden preparing armoured cables for glanding for some work I'm doing in the house. So it's been a bit of a mad day. You are a, I don't know what to call you, an Instagram legend.
I can read the description. Smart home integrator, Rayco lighting installer and programmer, Avian Home Cinema, Data Networks, Electrical, CDM member. So is that smart home related? Is it mainly?
Is it smart home related?
Is it all in the smart home world? All of that stuff.
Most of that is in the smart home world. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So that's from your Instagram page.
So I don't read it as that, Dave. I read it as a really, 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 really good electrician who's really smart and really good at all the really complex electricery stuff that even I struggle with. And I am one of those dinosaur guys, switches and lights and big buzz bars and big switch gear.
Yeah. I just wasn't sure what CDIA was or Rayco lighting, if it was specifically for smart homes. I didn't know if it was all in smart homes world.
Yeah, Rayco lighting is a lighting control system. Does lighting and blocks, and CDIA is the, for want of a better word, it's custom installation.
I have been to a CDIA conference actually about 3 or 4 years ago, and my brain melted. And I think part of it has never recovered. So yeah, CDIA have got some really good guidance notes and documents, and I think they were kind of the trailblazers for smart. You know, using data to do more finite control and make these lavish luxury homes a reality, to be honest with you. And now, is it fair to say that whilst a lot of the smart stuff is very high end, it's becoming far more affordable? That technology is becoming far more affordable into the normal domestic home, the domestic consumers wanting more of these fancy gadgets.
Yes, it is. You can still obviously there's still the high end technology out there available, but there's more and more stuff becoming more and more available to everyday.
So even though I do occasionally feel like a dinosaur, and that's just because I probably don't have enough time to do what I actually want to do, because my day job is a bit boring at times. One of the things that I have always encouraged people to do, especially when we go into the colleges to talk to them, is get into the smart home sector. It's an amazingly dynamic. It looks fascinating. The end product is something you can look back and be proud of. I'm going to say it now, and I'm trying not to flatter you too much here, but the workmanship that you put on your Instagram is off the charts, or workwomanship, should I say. It's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And I love the fact that you give really intricate detail of all the stages of the processes, because I've sat looking at your stories going, wow, okay, I'd love to be able to do that. And that's time and application, doing the work, which is really cool. But before we kind of talk more about smart homey stuff, could you kind of to those who have no idea who you are or maybe seeing you for the first time on YouTube, can you let people know a little bit about yourself, your background, how you got into becoming an electrician into the smart home sector?
Yeah, I learnt my trade in the Territorial Army about 25-ish years ago, in the early 90s, and was going to join the army, but didn't in the end, as these things changed, and ended up in the civil service for like 20 years. And when I met my husband, he was refurbishing houses, and I got involved, as you do. Really liked the electrical side of it. It reminded me of all my training, and thought, yeah, okay, this is an avenue I'd like to pursue. I've been after redundancy at work for a while, and then when the opportunity came up, applied for it, got accepted on about the 5th go, and then went back to college, refreshed my qualifications, and started Louise Tarling Electrical. And that was 5 years ago, so I'm in my 6th year now.
Wow, that's awesome. So how long have you been? How long did your training take, and what saw you kind of merge into the smart stuff, or was it just normal day-to-day work for you?
I did my original training in the Territorial Army, and that was like sort of 8-10 years worth of training.
Right.
But you don't actually really get qualifications that you can take out into the civvy street, as it were. So when I got the chance of going back to college, I went and did all the qualifications I needed to bring my training up to scratch and up to standard.
Yep.
And then, yes, this sort of about a year and a half ago, started seeing that the industry was changing and more smart stuff was creeping into everyday installations. Found it really interesting, and so just started researching and going from there.
So have you kind of fully committed to just being interested and biased to smart home work? Is there just too much work for you to then creep over to maybe just the standard commercial, industrial, sparky work?
I still do the standard sparky work.
Yeah.
But as time goes on, moving more into the smart side of things, the phone is ringing more with those kind of queries now. Lots of networking inquiries, especially after lockdown, with people working from home and finding out that the internet isn't as good as it needs to be. And just moving the business that way forward. But I'm still taking electrical work as it comes through the door, as it were.
I mean, one of the things that I do really kind of like about your Instagram feed, particularly, is you quite regularly, do either manufacturer training or your CDA training, but you're regularly just showing that you're having to learn and you're having to upgrade, or you're having to develop. So I mean, is this kind of industry something that is just there's just always too much to learn, and we're always going to have to keep learning in the smart home? It's always going to be moving forward, do you think?
Technology. The rate of change of technology is getting faster and faster. There's more and more things on the horizon, more and more things available.
So,
and you keep on top of it.
So if I was to go, okay, I'm going to develop a 1-year off-call accredited course for smart home installers, do you think that'll be fine, but then it'll be invalid 48 months later, most likely?
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
If you create a course like that, you'd have to keep updating it, and anybody that attended your training would need to keep their knowledge up to date, because, well, how fast technology moves. Look at how phones have moved on in the last mobile phones have moved on in the last year.
It's scary, isn't it? When I left school, they'd just come out, and I thought to myself, these will be a fad. £1.50 a phone call. This will never last. Now I've got the world's most powerful device in this. It's incredible what you can do now. It's absolutely mind-blowing. If you don't mind me saying, one of the things, and for anyone listening or watching, if you're not aware of her Instagram feed, I'll put it on the video somewhere. But on Instagram, the one thing I like about your Instagram account, it's kind of in the same vein as what we try to do with our one, and that's education. So when you post about you're booked on a training, you're actually telling people there is training available, which is great. And not enough Instagram accounts are sharing. I mean, the picture you had of the Cat 6 armored stuff, I was blown away. But some of the stuff that you're sharing, I didn't realise there are cables you can get now that does power and data and armour that you can run to sheds. I wasn't aware. Why? Because that's not in my day to day.
And it's sensible though. I mean, in the
Learning,
recent
of
post,
course, it is. It's
in the recent
brilliant.
post, you put that you're putting this networking in for future. Because you're thinking about the future and you're not doing what is needed today, but you're thinking about where things are going. No, it is good.
So I mean, I've learned from the CEDIA conference I went to. When I came back from that, my last home, I wired Cat 6 to every single room. I had four ports in every single room in the house, back to an unmanaged switch, and then just connected that into my hub. And then I was able to plug in all my smart devices everywhere. Apparently, that was the backbone of a very basic system. And if I then run coaxes, I would have had more capability. And that's been going on for many years. A lot of people have been running two coaxes, two Cat 6s or Cat 5s into domestic homes. But now I'm seeing people running lighting circuits using Cat 6 and all sorts of stuff, which is getting. It's definitely going. We're moving away from the twin and earth world, aren't we? Really, to an extent.
It's still there. You still need to get power to each, to the fittings or the other devices that control them. But yeah, it's not. When you start, if you're rewiring a house and you're looking at doing the future ready kind of, or as future ready as you can be, because you can't ever be future ready because you don't know what's around the corner. You don't rewire a house the same way you used to do 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the smart technology, if you're putting in wired stuff, needs a neutral in the back of the switch box. So you wire your feeds to your switches rather than to the ceiling points. But it's always worth wiring a permanent light to the ceiling point as well, in case you want a PIR or a sensor up there of some sort. The way you rewire a house is different. You don't run one long radial for the lighting circuits anymore. You run
3-plate,
one place, so then you can put a sensor hub in that will control all the different lighting circuits in a different way.
And you say you've been doing smart homes for 18 months or so. You've been getting into that kind of area. Do you think that smart homes, if they go fully into having a house converted to smart technology, do you think it is future-proof with the way it's wired, or do you think some of the LED lighting or some of the controllers may limit or have to be changed in the future? What kind of time lifespan do you think these systems have with the way they're being installed today?
The way they're currently installed.
Yeah.
The standard way of rewiring a house with a radial for one lighting circuit will mean that you can control the lights in those rooms, and you'd have to bring in some kind of wireless or RF system to be able to switch multiple loads on and off. But if you're rewiring a house now and you're literally whipping floors up and that kind of thing, it was worth thinking about wiring everything back to one central point. Yes, you use more twin and earth or network cables, whichever system you're running. But if you're thinking about future-proofing a house as much as possible, then run both. In the grand scheme.
So every room kind of has its own separate feed from that one station.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but in the grand scheme of things, running a cable isn't expensive at the time that you're refurbishing a house. The most expensive cable you'll ever run is the one that you need to run once the house is finished and decorated.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Totally agree. So I'm currently rewiring this house, and every single time I go into a room, I rip all the floor up, and I'm running data to every single point. I've even got spare cables coiled up. So I've got in my living room, I've got a 10mm armoured in case I want an EV charger in the future. So it's there because it's a big bulky armoured, and I've got a little hatch. I can lift it, poke it, job done. Even if I've got earth rods or foundation electrodes, I've got earth cables already run underneath rooms, ready to go for the future, because I'm trying to not put a ceiling back up or a floor. I have to rip an entire room up. So that is a key bit of advice if you're wiring. Try and future-proof without a doubt.
Yeah, I mean, like with Legacy, we kind of go, we rewire a house, we go socket, light switch, maybe down lights. But with smart homes, there's a lot more freedom, I think, in the design aspect. So, there must be, a common sense approach.
It is a little bit, but it is a case of you need to think a bit more about how you want to use each individual room and what you want to do with it, because you want to use your lighting loads to be able to create scenes, and you want to be able to control those lighting loads individually and separately. So if you've, kitchen generally, down lights in the ceiling, maybe under cabinet lights, and possibly, two-way switching, there's not much you can do. You've only got 2 lighting loads there. But whereas if you ran the cables slightly differently and ran them to a centre point, and you ran like downlights around the edge, the centre point to somewhere else, the centre point separately to back to the centre point.
You can always adjust it at that point, can't you?
You can then, you can always change it and reconfigure it once you've got cables run.
So I don't know if you remember, lads, in an earlier chat that we've had, because I'm currently rewiring. I've just taken down my hallway ceiling, which goes all the way through my house. And then that way I can rewire all my lighting circuits, because it's all old and horrible and knackered. And I've been toying with the idea of getting a box and literally running either a twin and earth or a 3-core and earth all the way to each switch, each position, each light, and all the way back to everything, literally a central point, so that basically every single connection is either at the end point or in a central box that I can just come out the board, loop in, and just wire it as a 3-plate, or if I want to change it, wire it as something else. If I get something smart, I have a spare core that I can just, I sleeve, and I can earth it and leave it and label it up as spare. But if I get smart controllers, I can disconnect it, use it as a neutral, etc. I'm currently toying with that idea at the moment. I'm not quite there because I'm just having my boiler replaced and all my central heating replaced at the moment. But it's next on the agenda, my new board, which I'll be putting on Instagram, and everyone will be tearing me to pieces, including John, no doubt. As John did condemn my last board, didn't you, John? What do you think of the whole smart stuff, John?
Well, I think that in the right places it can be useful, but I've seen some appalling installations, one of which I'm actually going to look at tomorrow for unrelated reasons, but it was put in like 13 years ago. It's wired bizarrely, and all it does is allow you to turn the lights on and off from a little button by the wall. So, I mean, yeah. And it's unfortunately, because it's 13 years old, it's totally obsolete, and it's basically a big pile of junk. So do you think there's a danger that even the stuff put in today, in say 5 years' time, you might end up having to replace big pieces of it or the whole system because it's just sort of now no longer supported, or the manufacturer's changed to something else?
There's always with technology, there's always a chance of that. However, what I would say is if you're wiring everything to one central point and one location, you've always got the chance of reutilising, reconfiguring or changing things so that you're not stuck with lights that don't work or other items. Yeah. It's the same goes now. You buy an integrated downlight and you say to the client, well, I've been fitting these for the last 3 years, but I know they're about to just go out of manufacture and you can't get them anymore, so buy a couple of spare ones and stick them under the stairs, and if you've got one that fails, because you've got to change the whole light unit, you can swap it out. You take that risk with all manufacturers, unfortunately, that they're going to stay in business. I mean, look at MK and now not making consumer units anymore.
Yeah, I didn't cry when they announced that. I just thought, well, thank you for your service.
Yeah, there's a lot of boards out there, and some say RCD dies on you and you need to buy another one and you can't get one. It's a bit of a pain.
Yeah, MK have gone through a lot of changes and they've kind of abandoned our industry a bit, which is a shame because they're literally across the road from me, the MK factory in Southend.
They were probably when I entered the industry, their logic was the best.
Best in the world.
It was the only thing we'd spec. Obviously, then they were taken over and they've gone downhill.
Well, Honeywell took them over and just ruined them. Sue me.
If you're going to put a new a smart light system in now, would you still put, say, an actual twin and earth or something with power to the light switch positions?
Yes. Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
Even though there's systems out there that are bus systems, if you're refurbishing the house, I would run the twin and earth, just because it gives you the total option about changing if you want to change it. So I have actually had one call where a client said to me, I've got this smart lighting system and I hate it because it doesn't work properly. I want it all ripped out and just put back to a normal light switch, which is, client's preference. So yeah, went and did that. But if you're putting in a system that is literally network only and everything runs off PoE, I would always run twin and earth as well, so you've got power available. In fact, I run all my switch lines in 3-core and earth, so then you've always got the option of both.
So that one I just referred to, which was put in 13 years ago, they've wired it. All the rooms have power from a central point to each room, lighting, but all the light switches are wired on some 4-core bus cable, and it just comes from one. It just loops around all the things, goes back to the start. So unfortunately, there's now no option to do anything else other than use that bus cable from that manufacturer with all of its obviously associated stuff, which seems to me an incredibly limiting thing, particularly now it's 13 years old, and obviously the bits are no longer available, and it's supposedly not supported. That's
how they rope you in, John. That's exactly how they rope you in. Closed protocol systems. You're locked into them.
So if you had a client that spec'd a system that required PoE to switch positions, would you, just for future-proofing, put twin and earth with that run as well?
I would suggest to the client, if they're refurbishing, if they're fully refurbishing and chasing into walls, I would put I would put 3-core and earth to switch lines. But yes, I would.
And people have mocked me when I've said that when I rewire, I run 2 20mm conduits to every socket and light. How easy is that to run a data cable in a twin and earth? You have just reaffirmed exactly what I want to do, because I'm thinking of running a 3-core and earth to all my lighting circuits, and also a Cat 6 to each point, and just earthing them all out in the back of the box, and just labeling it up as spare for future. And that way, whatever I want, I have the ability to then tailor each room in the future, or the next person does. Because I keep saying to people, I know we like to chase and cap. Again, when we first started doing wiring in houses many years ago, there was a little note. I think it was in the 7th edition, which was talking about protecting the fabric of the building, which is why everybody put conduits in. You put a conduit in and you protected the fabric. You didn't have to break out plaster. We now are in an industry where it's smash and grab, almost stick a bit of capping in, and if you've put the wrong cable in, it's a nightmare. Sorry, I'm ranting about my conduit obsession. Sorry, bring back conduit in the regs.
Paul's justified his conduits method. That's right.
Yeah. Thank you, Louise.
So, do you? I mean, obviously, you've been doing smart homes for quite a while now. Have you ever experienced in your time you've done the job, and maybe after the time the client couldn't handle the specific UI or the use of it, or maybe the software failed? Does that happen much, or because and how much do you have to get involved with that?
I haven't had that happen yet. I say yet.
Yes.
I haven't had it happen yet. I think that the hardest thing with smart homes and smart user interfaces is if they've not been explained to the client properly, and the client doesn't understand how to use them to their best to the best options that they've got available. Or integrators making it overly complicated, because at the end of the day, yes, it's nice to have smart lights that you can change scenes and do some wonderful things with, but ultimately you want to be able to turn your lights on and off.
Yeah.
The way you want to turn them off, when you want to turn them on and off.
I think smart homes has always been considered this. I think it probably started off as a high-end thing, because there is options you have to consider, as we said. If you're going to run a lot of additional cabling and have these smart systems that are networked and controllable via apps and stuff, there's a life of that asset, because most electrical installations, as we know in the UK, they are 40, 50, 60 years old. Now, a lot of people may have the perception that the smart systems will last 40, 50, 60 years old. Now, the cabling may, because it'll be undisturbed, but the actual head units, the technology, I think the people that go for it are those, if you don't mind me saying, geeks, the people who want to invest and have that level of control and the nice visuals and all that. But I'm noticing more and more now that smart home, it's more coming. I know someone who lives in a council house who has remote controls for all his light switches, and has an app and a fancy dial and has done stuff. So it's becoming more accessible to more people. Which I think is a good thing, but I think it's still, to me, a bolt on to the fundamental principles of being an electrician. It's what I will. If somebody says to me, right, I want to be an electrician, I go, great. What's your speciality going to be? Are you going to have a speciality, or are you just going to do house bashing, industrial? Are you going to do smart? Are you going to do EV, PV, rail, water, nuclear? How do you see your career going? Smart for me is a amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's
thing for future development.
You say high end, so it's one of those markets that developed for those who could afford to play around and be creative. But over time, things have been more accessible, more affordable. But if you think about what we've done when we've studied 60364 and we've looked at prosumer installations, a lot of the smart home supports that direction, where we look at relying on just use of DC power and we think about storing power. So it might be that while electricians can choose to either not go into smart homes or go into smart homes, it might be that in the next 10 years or so, electricians won't have the choice about installing PoE in the home.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right, because when I first looked at the CEDIA documents, I actually looked at this and I said 10, 15 years, this will start coming in to wiring rigs. And we have already researched, and I mean, there's IET documents on, power over Ethernet and stuff like that, which smart guys do a lot of anyway. There's more standards coming out for data center electrical installations. I think the CEDIA stuff will eventually work its way into the JPL Wiring Regs Committee. But there's one thing I want to raise as a question that's kind of stuck in my mind. Louise, you've just spoke about a very good and unique way of wiring a house. Now, Dave, I'll go back to colleges and learners. Are we still teaching? Because I'll be honest with you, Louise, we've been going around to colleges for quite a few years now.
Yeah.
And I'm an employer client of electricians, and my mind was blown away when I first met Dave, and Dave told me about the training industry in the sector. And I was expecting the learners to come out with that smart mindset, because everybody always says the next generation are smarter, quicker, keener, because they're growing up with the technology. What worries me is that the learners in colleges at the moment are still learning that basic squirrel cage motor, all that basic stuff that nobody really does anymore. Let's be honest about it. There is a niche for it, but we're not teaching people smart technology. I've just put some smart boards in on my railway. We had to have a training session because the bloke's like, hang on a minute, I plugged the laptop into the fuse box. Hello, mind blown. And that for you is just a normal day. Yeah, okay, yeah, fine, plug it in. What's the IP address? Great, fine, that's done. Set that up, brilliant, marvelous. Yeah. What can we do more in the colleges? Because I think the colleges are missing a trick in not introducing people to the smart. I love the term smart. The smart aspect of electrical installation contracting. Where do you think we might be going wrong, or what could we do to make that better? Open question.
Personally, I think colleges have got quite a broad spectrum of stuff that they need to teach students and really decide what they want to specialise in. I've got an apprentice she's at college now, but she's sort of she comes to work with us a few days a week when she's available, and the opportunities that she has to her on her electrical engineering degree are just are amazing. But you need to have a fundamental understanding of electrics and electronics before you can actually decide what your specialism needs to be. And I don't know that people are growing up with smart technology. Yes, they're growing up with a mobile phone and using app and Insta and Facebook and all the other TikTok and everything else that's out there. But are they really using smart technology? I'm not sure. Or they just sitting on their Xbox.
Exactly. I think we're at this point now, though, where smart homes and smart technology, which was a niche to show interest and divert yourself to, but I think we're now at the point where that information, such as you said, Paul, IP addressable systems, connecting a board up, nothing to do with a smart home install, working at a place of work that wants to have an addressable system talk to their BMS. So there needs to be some additional units added that touch into the smart technology route. And maybe if there's no time for that, we retract some of the more industrious power force kind of, you spend weeks talking about power, force and energy. Some stuff can be lost to then go to more modern technology.
Well, Dave, we talk about what is the ideal board, consumer unit, smart one.
Yeah.
Are we looking at, the Garrow units that look at the demand prioritization and isolation of circuits? Are we looking at a default type A RCBO? Are we then looking at the heat gain in boards? Are we ensuring that there's segregation in the boards? there's so much more. I think Artisan Jordan did a picture. He put a picture he took in France of a triple stack board.
Yeah.
And when we were in Austria, the Germans and Austrians, they have at least a triple stack board. That's their default. Now in the UK we complain because we have small little cupboards, but I think it's inevitable at some point we're going to have to be finding places. My last house, I put a double stack Wilex board in. I ran an armoured switch fuse. I wanted space. I wanted it to be maintainable, accessible, lots of space for future expansion, data, etc., etc. I think some houses will never be able to have that. There'll be limitations, and that will be made smart, I suppose, by accessories and clever trinkets that will last 18 months. But I do think there is more to do, and I think in the next 5 years, maybe 6, 7, 8, we will start to see that acknowledgement of smart technology in the wiring regulations and what mitigation measures. Because when we talk about smart, the first thing that comes to my brain is, what's the earth leakage of the total equipment? Is there any DC components in it? And does it affect my protection? That's the first thing I think. Then I think this is awesome for people to specialize in because it does some really cool stuff.
There's a whole market for assisted living with smart technology, which is probably not being touched on as much as it could be, because there's a whole realm of stuff that can help people live in their homes freely without having to be stuck not being able to do certain things. Or
is there any organisation that champions that or leads its manufacturing or anything?
Not that I'm aware of. Because
I'd be interested to look into some of that myself.
I desperately would like to. If I could bolt one thing on to my repertoire, it is a better understanding of the principles of a smart home. This is why when you put your certificate, your course booking notes, I'm sitting there going, screenshot that. I need to book that. That's on my to-do list.
Well, CJ do a lot of online stuff. I have been on their website before.
Okay.
I just don't know why I'm not familiar with the name. Maybe I just don't pronounce it that way.
No, I went to. So CJ have done a lot with the ECA. So the ECA have been very supportive and championed CEDIA over the years. And it was actually an ECA event in London, which was a Voltimum ECA. Well, they're all the same thing at the end of the day. But yeah, so they've done a lot to champion them anyway.
And Louise, you've done training with that. You've done their guys. Is that their online academy training you've done?
Yeah, quite a bit of their online training.
Would you rate it good? Worth doing?
Yeah, it's definitely worth doing. They're going through. They're upgrading all of their training at the moment. So there's a whole load of new training courses on there with updated information and more relevant. So yeah, it's definitely worth doing.
I think I'm going to set this as a target for next year, because this year by the time
my CPD targets this year have just gone to shit. Excuse my language. Yeah. Because of COVID. So yeah, my own plan.
Well, we are. Is it fair to say we're sitting on a back catalogue that is only to be described as biblical of stuff to read?
Yeah.
Is an understatement. But for me, I think next year is going to be hopefully that year. This year, by the time this comes out, we shall have been to the new Dane Lightning Protection Centre.
Oh yeah, I got an email from them earlier actually.
Yes, we have. Yes, we've been invited to the opening, so we shall have. By the time this comes out, we'll have been. So wasn't that great? Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, it was rubbish.
Rubbish. Oh, there you go. Who knows? But we'll let you know anyway. Just on the industry, have you? What's the best way of putting this? What challenges have you found in setting up and establishing yourself in this industry?
To be honest, I've been quite fortunate. I haven't really struggled in setting up myself. It was a case of, once I got my qualifications, there's always a lull between you've got your qualifications. My qualifications are now up to date again, and sorting out logos and that kind of stuff, and just that little bit of gap between your first job, which was only a couple of months for me, so it wasn't too bad. But the first job I picked up was a 5-bed rewire, which was quite handy.
Wow.
Not a small one there.
No, kept me busy for a while. And actually, I dragged him up. I mentioned earlier that I was refurbishing properties with my husband. I dragged him out to come and help me, to give me a hand, because, yeah, that 5-bedroom house on your own is a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, funny enough, and he's been with me since. So the two of us work yeah, work really
So
hard.
he's the chap in your posts on Instagram. That's your husband.
It is, yeah.
He's the guy running behind you across the fields.
He's the one doing what he's told.
He carries the bags, but he does a lot more than that.
Fair enough. Okay. So, well, yeah, I kind of gauged from the Instagram that I don't think you're having much problems with the business in general, because it's a very strong and rich Instagram account with fascinating content, fascinating topics, good subject matter. I find it interesting because I, like Dave and John, anything that's not within our own familiar bubble, we find it absolutely fascinating. This is why I want on these podcasts, we talk about the usual, the pipes and wires and the electrics and the earthing, but if we can push our own boundaries of knowledge and be inspired by others, that can only make you
Well, you've mentioned Instagram. Louise, do you find that Instagram helps you with your business, or gains you any business, or any other social media spaces?
Instagram and Facebook both help with the business. I've had people walk up to me in the street and say, "Oh, you're Louise Tarling from. I've seen you on Instagram," which is a bit odd.
Wow.
I've had quite a bit of work through Instagram and Facebook. So yeah, it's definitely worth doing. It's time consuming, yes. And it's a case of remembering to take lots and lots of pictures, because people don't just want to see the end product. They want to know what's gone on throughout, step by step and stage by stage. And then when you do eventually meet a client that says, "Oh, I've seen your Instagram page and can you come around and look at this for me?" They feel like they know you, which is quite nice. Because,
well, they recognise the shirts, they recognise the branding, they recognise the faces. So yeah, that makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally. We did an event at an Alex where we had a little stand and we all stood up to have a laugh, and that was a little bit. I think that was for me one of the first disturbing. Not disturbing in a negative way, but it was quite weird, with lots of people coming up to us and saying hello because they'd heard us and they felt like they'd known us, and someone flew from Canada.
That wasn't the problem. It was the ones that didn't get the message when we were gently going, "Oh, thank you for your time," and we were looking at other people, but they wouldn't
leave.
John in particular had a couple of guys that just wouldn't get the message. John's very polite. He doesn't say it's off, so we had to kind of step in for it.
We don't mention the safe word that we have.
No.
If we're being too overwhelmed, but we do have a safe word, which is really weird. But John, you had a chap come from Canada, didn't he?
Yeah, some bloke. He put a message on the YouTube video saying he'd be in the area and all the rest of it. And I'm thinking that doesn't sound very likely. Is this from Canada? But then we went there. He actually turned up. So there you go. You never know who can show up and for what. So.
Yeah, that was it's quite humbling when you go to like trade shows like Alex and people know you and they feel like they know you. But I think for me, the nicest thing is if anybody ever says or messages, and Dave, we've had quite a few of them in the last couple of years, is when people say, "I've listened to that, I've learned something. It's reignited my passion for the industry, and it's made me realise I wasn't doing as good as I know I can do." That I absolutely love as a piece of feedback. And one of the things I like about your Instagram account is it's reignited my interest for smart and workmanship and all the rest of it, because it's quality stuff. Yeah. I mean, I look at some of your posts and go, I've got to take better photos. And I'm so annoyed. I've just glanded at Armoured with a storm gland. It's my first time using a storm gland. I didn't take one sodded picture. I will do. I'll take pictures, but I didn't. I could have took the whole stages of the process. Yeah. But I was too damn busy just going, get it done.
And that's with Instagram particularly, getting the pictures that you have to think about. I need to stop and do this, or I need to slow down and do that, which is not easy. And yeah, we always forget sometimes. But
Dave actually sent me a message the other day. He doesn't realise this, but we had a cable blow up in the street, and they joined a PME, a new concentric aluminium cable, to an old PILC, paper insulated lead one. And Dave, I was sitting in the car and I thought, right, and Dave went, "Make sure you get lots of photos." And I was like, "Oh crap." So I get back out, jump in the hole and get all these really fancy like framed pictures of the PILC and the...
You took one picture which had like 4 joints
in one area,
in one little area of this cable.
Yeah.
And it just explains the whole situation with the DNOs.
We're doing a piece of work. It should have been out by the time this is released. But we're doing a piece of work on. There's evidently an issue with the DNO networks and the reliability on the neutral connections and the earthing. And there's a phenomenon known as diverted neutral current that we're looking at, which is why we say to people, one of the key things you should do now is put a clamp meter on the earthing system before you work on it, and then isolate the supply and see if that power goes away, because we're finding installations where you can isolate the installation, there's still power on the earthing, which means it's being imported from the DNO into the installation and going out somewhere else. Yeah. All these little things that when somebody decided on PME in the 70s didn't realize would actually happen. So it's something that the industry bodies are not telling us tell us about. So we are doing lots of research and have lots of training material in the go, and videos and pictures and stuff that we'll hopefully have spoken about by the time this comes out. If not, somebody give us a prod on social media to do something with it. Okay, so do you have any messages for or any thoughts for young women who are thinking about coming into the electrical industry, or any advice for young ladies who are thinking about a career in the trades? Because there's more and more, which is fantastic.
There are more and more, and there are definitely more female apprentices now than there ever were before, which is good, because there aren't a lot of females in the industry. And I would just say, if you're thinking about doing it, go and do it. Just go and do it. Go out, do some research, go and shadow the kind of thing you want to do. So if you want to be a domestic electrician, go and shadow one of those. Go and speak to the colleges, find out what courses are on offer, find out what those courses will lead to. Because, it's all well and good saying, yeah, I can go and do an electrical engineering level 3. What are you going to do with that? My apprentice, after her first couple of weeks at college, came back and said, oh, they've taught me some CAD design, and I've done, I can't remember what else, wasn't it? They taught us some great stuff in the first couple of weeks, and then they said the opportunities that are open to you, as you could be a woman in Formula 1 or working in British Aerospace. And she came out with all these wonderful things. And all of a sudden I thought, I want to be an apprentice and go back to college.
What college is this?
I want those opportunities. That would be amazing. But there are lots and lots and lots of opportunities out there. It's just a case of do your research, find out what you really want to do, and go and do it.
Do you think this industry is easy to approach for women?
From my own experience, I would say yes.
Good.
I know that it is a very male-dominated industry, and there have been some not so great experiences for some people, but I've never had any of that. I've only ever had positive reactions and great experiences. So I really can't say that don't do it, go do it.
And I think that's the thing is I remember as an apprentice myself and other apprentices around me, I was at that age, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I kind of had an idea. I wanted to do theatre lighting, for God's sake. I became an electrician so I could be really good at theatre lighting, but I stayed because of the money, and maybe one day I'll do it again. You never know. But I've met lots of apprentices in colleges. When you say, do you know what you want to do or where you want to go? No, it's just a thing to do. And this is where I think in our industry we're severely lacking. Mentoring, helping, supporting. 20 years ago, it was a nightmare. Now, luckily, thank the positives of social media, a mentor or a friendly phone call or a bit of advice, and it's okay. I've spoken to people and I've gone, do you know what you want to do? And they go, and they're so embarrassed to go, not really. And I go, that's fine. It's okay if you don't know. There's nothing to be afraid of if you have no idea what you want to do. I'm in my early 40s and I still don't know what I bloody want to do. You never do. What molds you is your experiences. And I always say to people, do whatever you want to do and don't let anyone stop you. And the challenge is finding a way round, climbing over the walls, whatever you need to do.
Yeah, one of the biggest struggles is they kind of, especially at the school time, is they kind of go, oh, this is for the rest of your life. And they don't realize how easy it is one day to just put in a post and go, right, I've done this to now. I'm not really enjoying it. I'm going to go a different direction. And the ways to retrain, or, as Louise did, going into territorials and then going down this way and then going like this. It doesn't matter. You don't have to make that decision back then. As long as it's always, as long as they're always the right methods to retrain and progress later on.
I think the point being is everybody's journey is different. I know people that have worked in health and safety. They've left health and safety. They loved environmental stuff. They then went to work in nuclear, left nuclear, and then went to become a bricklayer. Wow, what a mad career! It's down to you what you want to do, really. Chaps,
the opportunities are there. You just need to go and find them.
Yeah, definitely. And if you don't know where to find them, ask. I mean, we're all accessible on social media.
Yeah, and what I would definitely, you say social media. What I'd definitely say is if you go to a college that is maybe not as positive as Louise's British clearly is, good college by the sounds of it. If they give you information you're not happy with, ask elsewhere. Just ask others. There's plenty of people to ask in this sector.
And one other bit of advice I'll use: if you do ask for help from anyone, whether it be John or Dave or myself or Louise or any of the wonderful people on social media, first lesson, patience, because one thing that we have learned over the years is the volume of emails and stuff is overwhelming. And when you have a day job and a family and your voluntary stuff, it is so difficult to keep up.
I've got a guy that's messaged me on Instagram. He messaged me a voice message and I gave him a typed response. It's about thermal imaging, and he came back to me. I went, well, and then he came back to me. I didn't get back to him in time, and then he just sent some dots as if a bump, and I'm like, and then like 2 hours later, he sent me another one, and I was like, dude, I'll get to you when I can get to you.
Yeah.
So some people are just very impatient.
Patience is a virtue at the end of the day. Okay, right. Gentlemen, do you have any more questions for before I ask the main event question, of course, which is one that will tax you? John, do you have any? What's your view on the whole smart stuff? Because you are Louise, if you're not aware, John robbed NASA and builds proton packs with all that gear he's got behind and stored away. Dave just generally is stealth assassin in whatever spare time he gets.
Dave just buys white paint apparently and doesn't do any other thing in his office.
It is very bright in there, Dave. To be honest with you,
all my stuff's over there.
John? What's your view on the whole? Would you ever? Because you're obviously a domestic guy. Would you offer any smart services or technologies? And
I might. I've not done that yet. Unfortunately, all I've seen of smart stuff up to this point is basically stuff that some other people have put in horrendously badly and made a right dog's dinner of the whole lot. Like that thing I mentioned earlier, where they've just ended up with a system with basically a fancy light switch on the wall to turn the lights on and off, and now you can't get spare parts for it. It's all broken, and a couple of others which were put in obviously by people who couldn't care less, and it's all just been sort of thrown in, and they didn't do the final setup properly and that sort of thing. So I've not actually seen much in the way of decently put in smart stuff. So it's not something I've ever installed or actually offered to anybody because of that. So it's something I should probably look into.
Is it fair to say when a new technology comes out, there's always a bedding in and there's always some really bad? Because I have seen some bad smart stuff, but I think it's more because there wasn't that much information or guidance available. It was so new. If that's fair to say, maybe. But now I think we're at that. I mean, for me, let's be honest about how many years have people been putting LED lighting strips under cabinets and all sorts, yeah? And I've done it. And I'll be honest with you, I look at the way Louise does it and I just go, what an incompetent lash-up merchant I was. That's the way it's really much better than me, far better. And I think that's with any technology and developing your own skills, your own competence, and using a new technology. There's always going to be that level of
it's the kind of thing. I mean, I've got a house that needs rewiring. The guy who did this house before I moved into it, just he's a butcher. But things like Louise's Instagram feed remind me that I don't really know the best way to take advantage of wiring systems for the benefit of using your home. I would just right now go, light switch. So little things like that just make me just wait a little bit, and maybe going on to do some CD training or looking into it further. I've got more learning to do if I wanted to, innovate and create a smart home.
Yeah, I agree.
About thinking about how you want to use your home and what you want your home to do for you.
To be honest, I'll just ask her, and then she'll like, oh, really? We can do this. Because if I don't let her know now, she'll find out 2 years after I've rewired the blooming thing. That is the problem, because she comes with me to the exhibitions. You see, she walks around.
She does.
Yeah,
she does. She definitely comes to the exhibitions.
So she'll be like, "Can we have those? Can we have those?" I'll be going. Oh. So yeah, I need to do a little bit of learning first.
Yeah, that's probably a bad idea, actually, in hindsight, because you're speaking to people and she's looking at all the products and all the stuff, going, "Oh, that could look good. That could."
That's all she does. She looks at shiny things. I'll look at regulation numbers and codes and things, and she'll be looking at the pretty stuff.
Just on that though, Louise. I mean, so for me, my journey into connectivity, whatever, I've got like Apple TV, smart TV, Blu-ray players, and for me, I'm not a massive fan of Wi-Fi. I've always believed in just hardwired RJ45s. Everything's got its place. And a network switch. I've always believed in that. My last 2 homes, I've had that. I'm currently doing that here, and I'm finding you can never have enough bloody switches, because every product you buy, you can plug in. And that seems to be the thing I'm doing the most now, is running Cat 6 under the floor, and then going, right, okay, I'm going to need a bigger box, or I'm going to need.
It's the same as if you think about it. Well, you think about how much the electrical systems have moved on in houses. When you bought a house if you bought a house that was rewired 30 or 40 years ago, each bedroom's got maybe one socket in it. How many things do we plug in now that need like a power point? And with smart technology, more and more stuff is going to need a network port. So, yeah, having 2 or 3 sockets, 4 or 5. In fact, every time we've done a quote for a rewired, John always comes out and says, you can never have too many sockets. You can have not enough, but you can never have too many. And the same goes for the network stuff. If you're not running network to each room, then you're going to have to rely on Wi-Fi, which it's okay, but it's not the best. I would always run a hardwire, always.
Again, as you said, the time is when you're rewiring a home to put in the network, isn't it?
Yeah. You're the floors are already up because you're running cables. You're already channeling into walls because you're running cables. So yeah. Makes sense to, as long as you keep the separations and your segregation, it's fine.
I've got in this house, because I often go on the laptop when I try to get out of my office and my internet lags, and I look up and I go, right, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 tablets on in this room because of my boys. There's my wife on her phone. I've kicked her off the internet. She's now got free Wi-Fi. There's an Xbox. There's a TV that now has to talk to the Wi-Fi. There's about 20 things pulling on the Wi-Fi.
Data consumption, isn't it?
It's just
absolute data consumption. And this is why, for me, the fixed appliances, the ones that are always there that you use, for me, I want switched on, and then I can then choose whether I have my Wi-Fi on or off. I know a lot of people now, they actually run data into like their hallways, so they've got better Wi-Fi emitters so that they can get better reception around the house. I'm not particularly a fan of that, to be honest with you. I don't know. I'm not a 5G theorist or anything like that, but I'm just not a fan of bombarding yourself with electromagnetic fields when you're at home. So my goal is to have no Wi-Fi.
I often, because I say to Bella about things like the phone near the bed, things like that, I do try to avoid.
You've already mentioned that, you've got 3 or 4 people sitting on an iPad, you've got your TV that's on the network, you'll just strangle your bandwidth if you're not careful, especially if you try and run it all off Wi-Fi. You're so much, any devices that are fixed, TVs particularly, and gaming stations and stuff, hardwire them. You're much better off that way around.
And that means in my living room, I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 just behind the TV.
Yep.
Yeah.
So not that I'm a conspiracy theorist, but I do actually have a triple axis EMF meter. It's quite interesting, actually, if you're into EMC and the things you can't see, actually looking at how radiated emissions and how strong electromagnetic fields are around you, and then looking at the safe limits and going, oh dear, okay. But yeah, sorry, this is one of my little geeky toys. We've got loads of them. Not as good as John's, obviously. I can't, build a Ghostbuster mobile or anything with it, but I got some lightsabers. But that's about my background.
I've got a question. Obviously, well, first I'd like to say thank you for that video you used where you used your Fleur Pro with the cable in the wall. That was so helpful, and I've had so many people ask me about thermal imaging.
Yeah.
Where you just turn the load on and you can see the cable in the wall and the zones. I've used that as an example, but I've never actually had a camera when I've done it, and you did that, so I've had to reference so many people to that. Yeah, I'd just like to ask about, you do an installation, you do testing. Where with smart homes, with testing, you do like electrical installation certificate.
Yeah.
What kind of point do you stop? Or is there part of an installation you just can't put on that certificate, or is there another document, or how do you strap in all the smart home stuff on there, or is it just the accessory that is what it is? How does it kind of work with that?
Well, the electrical installation certificate will cover the electrical installation. And then obviously with all the data cables that you've got run and your network cables, you end-to-end test those and supply the details of that. And you also supply a cable schedule, so you know where every cable runs from and to, what it does.
Do you add that onto your EIC?
Well, you can't, but yeah, it's sent out as a part of a document pack, yeah.
Right, okay. I always kind of wondered if there was like some need to update that document or something to allow you guys to properly bring everything in. That's all. Because
the smart home stuff and networking isn't covered by the electrical regs, it's a bit difficult to actually update that document to make it cover everything that's needed. So you just supplement it with additional information and documentation.
Right. Okay.
So just one thing, because I've been talking to some telecoms people about that. I'm not going to go nerdy on us. But Regulation 11013, telecom systems. I actually asked my telecoms contractors for electrical installation certificates for the cabling that they put in, and they give me a really weird look and like, pardon? And you're like, well, the cabling system you're putting in is being installed because it's within the scope of 7671. So do you? I know CEDIA do some form of, because I remember when I was at their conference, they spoke about developing some form of smart commissioning system that would enhance the 7671 stuff. Is that now a thing? Have they developed that? Because I know they were talking about it at the conference I was at.
I don't think it's actual regulated documentation like the EIC. It's more a case of supplying cable schedules of where things run to, what they're connected to, what they actually do, labelling things properly. I mean, the bad it is when you turn up, there's a consumer unit not labelled. Imagine turning up and looking at a network switch that's got 24 ports on it and nothing's labelled. It's that kind of thing. And just giving the supplementary documentation that says that these cables will run from here to here and they run correctly, and they're also the one thing that annoys me about the smart home industry is all the cabling should be run according to 7671, but fire rated clips, do you see them very often? Not really. Yes, you do for electrical work, but not for networks. That kind of thing. And that's one of my wishes, which I know we're not there yet, but that's one of my wishes. That
I'm totally supportive of you, because I am at the moment going on a one-man crusade across an entire railway, ensuring that everything is fire compliant. And I'm going to say this loud: anyone watching who may work for me as a data installer,
beware.
Beware, because
it's always the culprit when you go to a place where the data installer is not the electrician. There's a huge different attitude to containment, to erection, to basically the work itself. And when someone like yourself does both, you want really everyone else to kind of respect the same way, I guess.
And it is quite amusing where you work on a site and there are other smart installers there, because you've been employed as the electrical contractor, and you start putting things like fire rated clips in, putting things in the correct containment.
They look at you funny.
Yeah, or worse still, they just cable tie their cables to yours.
Oh, no. Genius.
Yeah. So do you know, I actually the biggest rows I have at work is every time somebody says, oh, a telecom engineer wants to come in and do this, I have to go meet them and go, what are you doing? And they go, oh, I'm just going to tie wrap. No, you're not. This is what you're going to do. And then they have to go, oh, you want it done properly? And I'm like, yeah, I do. I want it done properly. And they're like, oh, that's going to cost more. Fine, bill me. And they're like, oh, right. And I'm like, my God, it's very frustrating. That is. Telecoms, I think, will always be, if you work in the non-domestic sector, telecoms and data engineers, the thing is, there are good people on social media, telecoms engineers. I love the guy in America who uses the cable comb. He just got a piece of MDF, drilled loads of holes in it, had dozens and dozens of Cat 5s and just fed them all through, jacked them up on drums, not one cable crossed. And he just walked along, banding them together, super neat installations, just using a piece of wood with holes in it. Called it a cable comb. I think he probably sells loads of them now, but I think there's some great comms guys out there, and I think the more positive data and telecoms and smart stuff there is out there, the more people can be inspired, because no one's teaching this in college.
No.
I think this is where the Art of Smart chap, I've seen his thing. He's set up a trainer. I'm not massively up to date on all of the movements of it, but I've seen it on Instagram, and I know there's an Art of Smart Academy, which can only be a good thing for people who want to go and develop and upskill and learn and all the rest of it. But I'm a bit out of date with that. I'm still stunned and shocked at your Instagram account. That just shows how much of a dinosaur I am, unfortunately. Right, I'm going to ask one last question. It's a taxing question. It's a probing one. If you had 3 wishes for, I'll tell you what, let's mix this up, for the industry or yourself, what would they be?
I've already mentioned one of them, which would be running cables properly. And I don't mean just electrical cables, I mean the networking side of things, speaker cables, whatever those cables are for, they need to be 1, contained, and 2, fixed properly, not plastic tie wraps. And there is a place for plastic tie wraps, but it's not hanging cables off of other cables. Another wish would be more opportunities for adult apprenticeships. So if you want to change your career, it's possible. It's just not as easy when you're slightly older than if you're sort of school age or college age. Mature students do exist. They're just not a lot out there, unfortunately. And for those apprentices, those adult apprentices, to get a placement is even harder.
Yeah, I agree.
I get asked quite a lot about have I got a place for an apprentice, and quite a lot of them are older people, and that's fine. I have no objection to that. It's just I don't have the space. That's unfortunate, but that would be really nice to see those opportunities for older people who are wanting to move industry or change career.
And
a third wish. Now you've put me right on the spot. I've got to think of one now. Do you know what? I'm probably going to struggle there.
Okay, what about one for yourself then?
A wish for me?
Yeah, why not?
Just a few more hours in the day would be useful.
Is Louise Tarling Electrical Limited, whatever it is it recruiting? Is it growing? Or are you keeping it small?
It's small at the moment. It's not recruiting at the moment, but at the moment it's my husband, and our apprentice. It's 3 of us. But the way things are going, if things keep going the way they're going, then I will have to expand.
Yeah. Do you think mentally? I mean, have you employed before? Is that something that you're ready to do? It's a big step.
It is a big step. And as Louise Tarling Electrical, I haven't employed before, but I have managed people before, and right. I don't know if I want to be a manager. I quite like being on the tools and enjoying the work I'm doing. So if I was to expand the business, I'd have to start managing staff. And
you've already said you haven't got enough time.
Yeah, but there's also a little bit of me can't let go at the moment. I like being on site. I like being on the tools. I like doing what I do. And
as your Instagram feed shows, with you pulling cables behind bushes and things. Yeah,
that's the trouble with Instagram. You can't get away with anything.
No.
I think one of our friends, Tom Nargi, he's got the same thing at the moment. He's recruiting, he's growing his business, but he's also doesn't want to let go of the tools because he loves it. But he also realizes that when he's in his late 50s, early 60s, he can't be crawling around lofts and under floors and all the rest of it. So I think he's wrestling with his consciousness at the moment as to how he takes his business forward. And good luck to him. Good luck to anyone who wants to grow their business anyway, because it's full of its own unique challenges, say the least. Right. Do you have any questions for us at all, or any thoughts, feelings about the industry you would like to share before we wind this up?
One of the things I'd I made a few notes earlier so I could make sure I didn't forget things. One of the things I did want about is like it's not about snitching, but every now and again, obviously, you come across dangerous and substandard work, or where clients have been ripped off. But there doesn't seem to be anywhere that's really taking it seriously about where to report it to. So I'm registered with Stroma certification, and I have spoken to them on at least a couple of my assessments about if we come across these things, how do we go about reporting it? Don't really get a lot of.
So I can answer that.
Go-to.
I can answer that if that's okay, Louise. So I can give you the managing director's phone number, and you can report it directly to him. And if you send him pictures and a phone number, it will prompt him into action, because he hates people that are carrying his badge. And
if it's work that's by somebody who's registered, then you've got the registration bodies to go to. But what if those people aren't registered?
Yeah, it's known as the grey market. The trouble is a lot of the industry body. I mean, we could do a podcast on this alone, but the industry bodies are very, very bad at policing their own registered members. There's only so much they can do. But when someone does find horrendously, and we have found over the years horrifically dangerous work, but there's always been that hot potato throwing around of, well, they're outside of their scope, or they're not registered because they didn't pay, or some other little excuse that.
There's been a number of excuses to not progress.
Do anything. Yes.
We've seen it with all of the different CPSs involved. Some have been very dangerous situations as well. It's unfortunately with the current model that we have, it's just no one is accountable. And so no one gives a shite. But unfortunately,
it leads on to it, Dave. And this is one thing that really annoys us a lot is when people say the industry body. Our electrical industry is not regulated in any way, shape, or form by anybody. The ECA, the NIC, the JIB, all they do is call themselves voluntary regulatory bodies. They're for-profit private companies. Now, if your members who pay you to police them, it in itself is a weird conflict. Now
they're just subscription services for authorization or access to the industry, basically. Unfortunately, I've regularly kind of discussed the idea, the way that I see things, and if we were to introduce licensing, and every single electrician had to submit. Basically just register the work on that license, and then if a later electrician came in, found that this workmanship carried by that individual on that license was obviously not safe. First of all, the person putting his name, in history is going to give more of a crap if his name is always, or his or her name is always there, reference to that workmanship. And also, it's much easier to then whoever authorized that license say, look, go look at this, and they can then link it. If it is evident that the work is definitely due to that workmanship from that, and that's why it's important to obviously record your work properly. We've said this on the previous webinar with photos of your work during the initial verification. That's your evidence you've done a good job. Yeah. If you've done a shit job and you go, well, but I didn't take any photos. I wonder why you didn't take any photos.
And
here's people like Louise Tarling with all these photos of their work on the internet. Where's your work? I don't take photos. That's stupid. That's evidence of your workmanship. And if you leave a number with a license, then they can sanction that license. Until you learn from it.
But it's more than that, Dave. It's evidence of underpinning competency as well, because it can be peer assessed in some form.
That is peer assessment, because Louise could go, that's shit. Let me call this person and go, this number, this person, come and look at this, and they can come round, and the body can look at that, because the person who gives a damn later has assessed it and determined that and raised the issue. They're not going to, you wouldn't abuse it, because fundamentally, if you take them, you may get sanctioned yourself for just raising stupid flags. But there's got to be some control where, Louise in this situation would have a strategy. There's a number that's traceable of the person who's been authorized to do that, and that person now needs to be accountable for that work. There's no accountability right now. Period.
Yeah, the accountability. You're right there.
Anything else from your notes you would like to raise? A very valid one.
I don't think so. I wrote a fair amount to make sure I covered everything, but another wish. I do have another wish.
Okay.
Great, go for it.
Getting work clothes to fit properly in a lady's size, which I know you three probably don't care.
Right.
The mission is a mission. I either have to buy small blokes' clothes which don't fit properly, or their sizes are ridiculous.
So there is a play. I'm pretty sure there is, because there was a lady who, excuse me, she worked for the Office of the Rail Regulator, and it's a highly respected organisation. And she went on LinkedIn and threw the OOR under the bus and said, "Why am I wearing blokes PPE? I'm a woman. This is crap. Look at me on the middle of a railway wearing all this rubbish." And it embarrassed them so much that all of a sudden a company popped up that did bespoke women's PPE. Now, we went to a college in East London where there were two young apprentices, female apprentices, and we said, "What's your gripes to the industry of what you've seen?" And both of them put their hands up and went, "Workwear for women trades. We want to set up our own company for workwear for women trades because there's just no one doing it, and it's pants. We don't want to wear stuff designed for blokes." And it's a very valid point.
Yeah, I mean, I've just gone to one manufacturer. I've searched the term woman. I'm assuming that's not too generic. They've got two products. They've got a woman's jacket, high vis, women's painter's holster pocket trousers.
Wow.
And that's the major manufacturer that we often wear their name when we do our E5 things. That's
really?
what they've got if you search woman.
That's terrible.
So yeah, no, there's definitely. I mean, I saw somewhere women's safety footwear. I don't know where I saw that. I don't know. It stood out to me. But no, that's a very interesting point.
Right. No,
I mean, I often struggle to buy workwear, but for the other problem in that often they don't go as big boy size. Whereas Dickies do. I can't remember who else. Port West, I think. But they only got to a certain size, and then they just assume everyone else isn't on site anymore.
Extra cuddly is my favourite size, or even extra cuddly for that breathing room.
Yeah,
well, you might need it. No, it's valid. It's a valid point. There needs to be more. So if anyone listening, manufacturer-wise, or knows where you can get some great workwear for women, if you can please message us or message Louise directly on her Instagram feed, then I'm sure that would be appreciated, and we can maybe share that around.
I saw on Twitter the other day. There's a lot of lady, there's like a trades community of women on there, and they were saying that they want to have women that's clothing that's just properly cut for women, because you just wear clothes differently, and there shouldn't be a thing that they have to beg for in the workplace. Yeah,
it does. It speaks volumes, isn't it? How unprepared the industries are.
But it's time to ask industry for it, and so many different trades are doing that. So I'm going to look and I'm going to retweet it later.
Okay, fair enough.
No, good question.
Very good.
Good wish.
Yes, very good wish actually. So far you're far better wishes than John or Dave. Do you have any other thoughts and pieces that you would like to? And the fact of the matter is if you have any more and you want to do this again, you're always welcome to come back on here anyway and put the world to rights about any issue. Trust me, we've done lots of these, and we have literally done ones where we've just spoke about one subject for an hour, and we could probably done 3. So yeah, sometimes this is quite a good mechanism for release, and a lot of people listening to this in their vans or on their radios will be agreeing. So any other points before we wind this up? John, Dave, anyone have any thoughts or questions?
I would just say, if you haven't actually looked at smart homes, Louise's Instagram feed is a great place to start, just to look at what it's like for electricians in the field. Yep. Lots of different types of systems. Some stuff you notice, that you're familiar with. Some stuff's just completely foreign. Completely foreign. And then you're there doing like boards and boards of connections and things, and then there's a head underneath the table. Yeah, no. So check it out. And you mentioned Art of Smart earlier on. There's some good people on Instagram showing the smart sector. Mm-hmm. Check that out, and then. I don't quote me, but I'm sure that a lot of manufacturers will have a lot of training or reference material to kind of tease you into the sector as well. So check it out.
Yeah, definitely. There are a lot of manufacturers who will train you to use their products so that you can install their products correctly, which is really, really useful and helpful. And it's a really good place to start because that training generally is free.
Good.
Indeed. Right. Okay. Well, we will end this podcast here. Louise, thank you very much for coming on and being our guest. You are more than welcome to come back on anytime you choose. Just message us and we can get the gang together, or whoever's available can be together. For everybody listening, thank you very much for listening to these podcasts. I've got Dan in my brain saying, please like and subscribe on the YouTube thingy. I will put links to Louise's Facebook and Instagram. Louise, where can we find you? What's your tag? Your at
Louise Tarling Electrical.
Louise Tarling Electrical. Nice and simple. Yeah. No underscores or any other fancy symbols in it. Fantastic. Right, Louise, thank you very much. And until the next one, everybody. Dave, John, thank you. Take care of yourself and each other. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.